Escape account. The door he didn't know about. The first time Lena heard the phrase escape account, she was 12 years old, sitting at the kitchen table while her mother sorted bills into neat, controlled piles. It was a Sunday evening ritual. Envelopes arranged by urgency, a cup of chamomile gone cold, the kitchen smelling of the pot roast that had been slow cooking all afternoon. Her mother's hands moved with purpose. She had beautiful hands, the kind that had once played piano in a church choir, before life had redirected them toward harder work. "Never trust a man with your future," her mother said, not looking up. "Not fully. You can love him, sure, respect him, build with him, but always have a door he doesn't know about." Lena had been doing her homework, long division, something she already found pointless, and she looked up slowly. "What do you mean?" Her mother slid an envelope across the table, tapping it twice. It had no return address that Lena recognized, and the handwriting on it was her mother's own, deliberate and private. "This is mine, always has been, always will be. If your father ever steps out of line, I won't be the one begging. I'll be the one leaving." There was no anger in her voice, just certainty, like she was explaining gravity. Lena looked at the envelope for a long time. Then she looked at her mother, at the quiet in her jaw, the steadiness of her eyes, and something sealed itself into place inside her. Not a lesson exactly, deeper than a lesson, a philosophy, a shape the world was supposed to take. She went back to her long division and didn't ask any more questions, but she didn't forget. Years later, when Lena was in her early 20s and working as an office administrator for a mid-sized insurance company, her mother called to check in the way she always did, every Sunday, 7 p.m., without fail. "You seeing anyone?" her mother asked. Sort of. He's a truck driver." A pause. "Long haul?" "Yeah." Another pause, briefer. "That's steady work. They always need drivers." "Does he drink?" Number more than anyone else." "Is he kind to you?" Lena thought about Marcus, about the way he'd walked her to her car after their second date, even though it was only 2 blocks, how he'd called the next day, not to seem eager, but just to say he'd had a good time and wanted her to know it. "Yeah," she said, "he's kind." "Good," her mother said. "Just don't forget what I told you." She never said it again after that. She didn't need to. They married within 2 years of meeting. The wedding was small, 40 people, a backyard in late September, fairy lights strung between oak trees. Lena's mother wore a dress the color of slate and looked quietly satisfied. Marcus's mother cried through the entire ceremony. They rented a small place just outside the city. Nothing fancy, but clean, manageable. The kitchen had good light in the mornings, and there was a patch of yard where Marcus talked vaguely about planting something someday. Tomatoes, maybe. He never did. He was rarely home long enough. Marcus worked long weeks, sometimes gone 5-6 days at a time. He'd come home tired, sunburned, and smelling faintly of diesel and road dust, but he always brought his check home, always handed it to Lena. "You handle the bills better than I do," he'd say. "I trust you." And she would smile. Every time. She did handle the bills well. That part was true. She had a gift for numbers, for seeing the shape of a budget the way some people can read music, instinctively understanding which notes are coming next. She stretched what Marcus brought in further than either of them ever acknowledged. The first time she transferred money into her escape account, Caleb was 4 months old and asleep in his carrier on the counter beside her. Her hands trembled slightly, not from guilt, but from something closer to discipline. The feeling of a person doing what they've always planned to do, finally doing it. 10%. Clean. Consistent. She set the account up under her mother's address, paper statements only, no digital trail tied to their shared life. She had researched this carefully, had spent 3 evenings reading about financial privacy, about how to legally maintain a separate account, about what constituted marital assets in their state. She was thorough. She was always thorough. It felt smart, controlled, necessary. She told herself it wasn't about Marcus specifically, it was about reality, about patterns, about what men eventually did. She had watched her aunt lose everything in a divorce, not because her uncle was cruel, but because she had no money of her own, and no leverage, and no options. She had watched her coworker Tanya stay in a miserable marriage for 6 extra years because she couldn't afford to leave. She had watched her mother sit across from her father on Sunday evenings with that quiet, particular confidence, the kind that comes not from love alone, but from the knowledge that you could survive without it. Lena didn't want to be trapped. She had decided that a long time ago. Marcus never questioned the finances. The shared account ran tight most months, sometimes dipping low enough to brush against overdraft, but they always managed. Rent was paid, food was on the table, the kids had what they needed. And Marcus, who had grown up poor and measured wealth in terms of bills paid rather than money saved, assumed this was simply how life worked. You worked hard, you stayed afloat. Maybe someday you got a little ahead. He worked longer routes when the opportunity came, took the overnight runs, came home with his hands cracked from cold steering wheels, and ate whatever Lena had kept warm, and fell asleep on the couch watching sports he couldn't follow because his eyes kept closing. And Lena, quiet in the kitchen, moved another 10%. The years passed the way they do when you're not looking directly at them. Caleb turned 6 and became obsessed with anything that had wheels. Trucks, trains, construction equipment, the little die-cast cars he arranged in precise rows on his windowsill. He had Marcus's hands and Lena's eyes and a laugh that seemed to come from somewhere older than him. Amara arrived 2 years after Caleb, smaller and quieter, a baby who observed everything with an expression of patient evaluation. She slept in a crib at the foot of their bed until she was 14 months old, and then, without ceremony, simply started sleeping through the night. Marcus adored them in the way that men with limited time often love their children, intensely, guiltily, with an awareness of every hour spent away pressed like a thumb against his chest. He got down on the floor, even when his knees ached. He learned the names of Caleb's favorite trucks and memorized the particular stuffed rabbit that Amara could not sleep without. He missed birthdays because of work and made up for it with quiet, genuine effort when he got home. He never pretended the absence didn't matter. He just tried to make the presence count. Lena watched all of this and felt something she could not name, something adjacent to guilt, but not quite guilt, tangled with something adjacent to love, but not entirely that either. She cared for Marcus. She respected him. She was not unhappy, but she was also not fully present. Part of her was always standing near a door. The account crossed $50,000 when Amara was learning to walk. It crossed $80,000 the year Caleb started school. She had gotten smarter with it over time, moved the money into a high-yield savings account, then diversified into mutual funds and targeted investments. She read quietly at night while Marcus slept, learning the language of compound interest and index funds and asset allocation. She became, in secret, a genuinely skilled investor. The kind of careful, patient intelligence she applied to the household budget, she now applied to something larger, $100,000. Then more. She told herself it was freedom. She told herself it was wisdom. She told herself it was simply what her mother had taught her, the inheritance not of money, but of strategy, of self-preservation, of the hard-won understanding that a woman's security cannot depend entirely on a man's continued loyalty. Meanwhile, Marcus sat at the kitchen table one night, rubbing his forehead with the heel of his hand. The kids were in bed. The house was quiet. "I don't get it," he said. "I'm working more than I ever have. Fuel costs went up, sure, and the truck needed work, but still, we should be able to save something by now, shouldn't we?" Lena was rinsing dishes. Her back was to him. "Kids are expensive," she said. "Life is expensive. We're doing okay." "I know we're okay. I just thought by now we'd be—" He paused, searching for the word. "Further." "We're fine, Marcus." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I keep thinking about buying, instead of renting, something for the kids to grow up in, something that's ours." "That takes a down payment." "I know. That's what I'm saying. I feel like we should have something by now, and I can't figure out where it's going." Lena turned off the water, dried her hands. "It goes to life," she said. "That's where money goes." He nodded slowly, accepting it, because he trusted her. That was always the quiet tension in the room, one-sided, invisible, growing. The inciting moment came on an ordinary Friday in October. Marcus had gotten back earlier than expected. A route had been canceled, weather on the pass, and he'd driven straight home instead of waiting it out in a truck stop like he usually would. The house was empty. Lena had taken the kids to her mother's for the afternoon. The house was still in the way that houses are only when they haven't been empty long. The smell of the morning's coffee still faint in the air, a sippy cup on the counter, one of Caleb's small trucks abandoned on the hallway floor. Marcus stepped over the truck, went to the kitchen, thought about making coffee. On the counter sat a small stack of mail. Most of it was junk. Flyers, a catalog Lena had never unsubscribed from, the electric bill. And then, near the bottom, something different. An envelope with a different address. Her name in the return field. Marcus was not a suspicious man. He had, in 11 years of marriage, never gone through Lena's phone or her purse or her email. It wasn't a matter of willful ignorance. It was simply that suspicion had never found purchase in him. He trusted her in the way that people trust the floor beneath them, not by thinking about it, but by walking on it every day. But something about the envelope stopped him. He picked it up, turned it over. No logo he recognized. Her name, but not their address. He set it down, picked it up again, told himself it was probably nothing. A bank offer, a credit card solicitation. He opened it. The number didn't make sense at first. He read it again. $118,436.72. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd told her, 3 weeks ago, that he didn't understand where all the money was going. He flipped through the statement slowly. Monthly deposits, going back years. Consistent amounts. Methodical. The way Lena did everything. His hands went cold. He was still sitting there when Lena walked through the door an hour later, carrying Amara on her hip and laughing softly at something Caleb had said in the car. She stopped when she saw him. The laugh faded. She looked at the paper on the table. "What's that?" she asked, though she already knew. "That's what I'm asking you," Marcus said. She set Amara down, closed the door, told Caleb to go watch TV. Then she stood across the table from her husband and looked at him steadily. The conversation that followed was not explosive. That was the worst part. It was surgical. Every word cutting clean, with the precision of something that has been inside a person for a long time and finally finds its way out. "I've been putting money aside," she said, "for security." "From our household account?" "Yes." "For how long?" She met his eyes. "Since Caleb was a baby." He absorbed that. 6 years. "Yes." The quietness of his voice was worse than shouting would have been. "And you never thought to tell me?" "It's not something I felt I needed to tell you." "We've been struggling, Lena." The word came out careful, measured, like he was handling something fragile. "I've been out there. I've been killing myself out there, wondering why we can't get ahead. I sat at this table 3 weeks ago and told you I didn't understand where the money was going. And I told you life was expensive, which is true. It's also true that you had $118,000 I didn't know about." She didn't look away from him. "I built that. I chose those investments. I managed it with money that was supposed to be ours. With money I was protecting." "From what?" he asked. "From what, Lena? What have I done in 11 years? What have I ever done to make you think you needed protecting from me?" She hesitated. Just a fraction, just enough for him to see it. "It's not about what you've done," she said. "It's about what people do." "People?" he repeated. "Men," she said, more precisely. "What men eventually do." He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, lower, almost wondering. I've never cheated on you. I know. I've never lied to you. I know. I've never given you a reason, not once, Lena, not once, to believe I would leave you, or hurt you, or let you down in any serious way. I know, she said again. Then what is this? He touched the edge of the statement. Help me understand what this is, because from where I'm sitting, this looks like you made a decision at the beginning of our marriage, maybe before our marriage, that I was eventually going to fail you. And then you spent the next 6 years planning for that failure, while I was out there trying to build something for us. Silence. I was raised to be practical, she said finally. I was raised to take care of myself. That's not the same as keeping secrets from your husband. It's insurance. Insurance, he said slowly, is something you take out against accidents, against things outside your control. This, he touched the paper again, this is something you take out against me, specifically, against the possibility that I am going to become a man that you need to escape from. He looked at her, and I never was that man. I was never going to be. She didn't answer. And that silence, more than anything else, told him everything. Because she didn't disagree. She couldn't. The account had never been about Marcus in particular. It had been about a category she'd assigned him to before she'd ever truly known him. He had spent 11 years trying to prove himself to a jury that had already reached its verdict. He realized it then, the thing he should have been looking for instead of savings or a house or a plan. Not whether she loved him. He believed she did, in her way. But whether she was in this with him, whether she was facing the same direction. She wasn't. She had never fully turned around. The divorce moved quickly. Not out of bitterness. Marcus had been raised in a religious household and didn't believe in bitterness as a luxury, but out of clarity. Once a thing becomes clear, prolonging it is just a form of dishonesty. In court, the financial deception didn't go unnoticed. The judge was a practical woman who had seen many variations of this story. She didn't punish Lena outright. The account had been managed legally, the money was traceable, there had been no fraud in the criminal sense. But the imbalance was noted, and the settlement reflected it. Assets were split, including the account. Marcus walked away with a little over $50,000 and 2 children who now went back and forth between 2 homes. He cried once, in his truck, parked outside a rest stop in Nevada on a run he'd taken to clear his head. He sat there for about 40 minutes, and then he wiped his face, pulled back onto the highway, and drove. That was always how he had handled things. He drove. The resolution didn't come fast. It came through work, as it had always come for Marcus. He took classes, nights, weekends, whenever he wasn't on the road. Finance first, then business management, then logistics and fleet operations. He had always understood trucks intuitively, the way some people understand language or music, and now he turned that understanding toward ownership. Toward systems, toward the difference between doing a job and building something. He used his portion of the settlement not as a safety net, but as a seed. Within a year, he owned 2 trucks, his own, and one he leased to a driver he knew from the road. A man named Darnell who was exactly the kind of driver Marcus had been. Steady, reliable, trying to build something from the cab of someone else's vehicle. Marcus paid him fairly, split the profits honestly, and taught him what he was learning. The fleet grew slowly, not dramatically. Marcus was not a dramatic man, but steadily, the way a tree grows, which is to say, imperceptibly until you look back at where it was. By the time Caleb was 12, Marcus owned 8 trucks and had 6 drivers on his payroll. He had moved into a modest house in a neighborhood with good schools, 3 blocks from a park where he took the kids on Saturdays. He coached Caleb's Little League team. He attended Amara's school plays. He was present, as he had always tried to be, just more rested now, more himself. He remarried 4 years after the divorce. Her name was Diane, a logistics coordinator he'd met through work. practical and funny, a woman who said exactly what she thought and expected the same in return. Their first serious conversation had been about money, what they each earned, what they owed, how they wanted to build together. It had been uncomfortable and necessary, and afterward they had gone out for barbecue and talked about other things. They had a joint account and 2 individual accounts, and every quarter they sat down together and reviewed all 3. No hidden doors, no silent contingencies, just shared direction and the particular peace that comes from it. Lena kept her half of the settlement, continued investing, continued living carefully, intelligently, independently. She was not unhappy. She dated occasionally, a landscape architect for several months, a college professor for almost 2 years, but none of it deepened into anything that required her to lower her guard in the particular way that marriage had. And she found, after a while, that she didn't miss the lowering. She was comfortable. She was secure. She was also, in a way she rarely let herself examine, still standing near a door. Her mother called every Sunday at 7 p.m. They talked about the kids, about markets, about the quiet satisfactions of self-sufficiency. Her mother had never had to use her escape account. It had simply sat there for decades, a number on a page, a door in a wall of a house that was never on fire. She had grown old in a marriage that had, by most measures, been a decent one, but she had also never fully trusted it, and something in that, some constant low-grade vigilance, had cost her something that didn't have a name. Lena sometimes wondered what it was. She didn't wonder long. She had learned, from the best teacher available to her, that wondering too long about such things was how you ended up unprepared. Marcus, for his part, thought about Lena less than he expected to. He thought about the account sometimes, not with bitterness, but with a kind of wondering. What might have been different if she'd told him? What they might have built together with that money, with that intelligence, with those years? He tried not to perform the math of it, because the math led to grief, and grief was a toll road he had chosen not to take. He thought more about what she had said to him at that kitchen table, from what men do. He had turned that over many times. He understood it intellectually, the fear behind it, the logic of self-protection, the particular damage that certain histories do to a person's capacity for trust. He didn't think she was a bad person. He thought she was a person who had been given a map very early in life and had followed it very faithfully, all the way to a place she hadn't quite intended to end up. He hoped she found her way to somewhere better. He genuinely hoped that. But he had also, quietly and without ceremony, stopped waiting for her. And in that stopping, in that release, he had finally found the thing he had always been trying to build. Not a house, not a fleet, not a number in an account. A life that was fully, unconditionally his.